Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the LiftAffect podcast. I am your host, Matt McNeil, founder, clinical director, and director of human performance at LiftAffect, where we assist professional pilots with maintaining better mental health and optimizing their mental skills. The goal of this podcast is simple: to help pilots and other high liability professionals and disciplines come out of the shadows to discover how we can live better lives personally and professionally. Join us each episode as we discuss various topics ranging from mental health, mental skills and performance, to business, entrepreneurship, and a few other surprises along the way.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of LiftAffect podcast. This is your host, Karl Keller, and I'm along with man of the moment, Matt McNeil, who never, ever stumbles over words. That's your cue, buddy.
Okay. Oh, wait.
Yeah. Stumbling. Yeah, it's stumbling.
I don't stumble over words. I just stumble over life.
And I love living with my other great affliction in life, dyslexia, where 7 out of every 5 people are wrong.
That's awesome. I have not heard that one. That's good.
Thank God I don't transpose things. That would be
7 out of 5 people.
And it was actually, I will tell you, that was actually that's always been a challenge my whole life, flying, my whole life, because I had to be really careful transposing frequency numbers and stuff like that. It was always, that was just a challenge that I had. That was one of my things, and I knew it and I was very aware of it. So I would focus on it, but it was very easy for me to flip, 134.3 to 143.3 or something like that.
I always wrote the frequencies down, which everybody laughed at me for that. But I'm sort of a pattern guy. I'm not that bright, but I've been able to figure out patterns to things, and that's how I've been able to move through most of what I've been able to do in my life, was just pattern recognition. And I would always write, you're flying the same route many times over and over, and I would write the route, and then I would write the frequencies down, and over time you realize it's the same frequencies, and you can kind of memorize pretty quickly what the next frequency is gonna be. But it also good insurance, just to make sure you don't screw it up. Because I'd always it was another way just to sort of stay engaged with what's going on, not be staring out the window reading the USA Today for too long.
And I tell you, the controllers overseas, especially in China and Russia, very, very much so pattern based. I mean, boy, if you want to throw them a loop, just ask for something outside of just the normal routing. Oh my God, they would just it would vapor lock. They would just freeze. They would actually give you what they thought you asked for, which is what you normally ask for. It's like they didn't even hear you because they didn't know how to respond.
Yeah, so, it's like out of sequence. Or in Mexico, they don't care. Like they clear you for the approach like 300 miles away. You're like, just clear for the approach. You're like, dude, we're like 2 hours away, man. And there's thunderstorms between us and there, and they're not going to tell you about the thunderstorms. You're kind of, you better get your radar up, because it's just sort of on your own.
How times have changed. I remember one time I was getting ready for pushback, and it was Des Moines. We got cleared for the push, start engines, taxi, and take off. And he goes, have a good night.
Yeah. Right.
It's like, wow, boy, I wish this happened more often.
Yeah. Or you're going into somewhere like, Oshkosh, at 2 a.m, and the controller, he clicks on, and you can hear the movie Star Wars in the background. You even knew which scene it was. Yeah. They're totally watching Star Wars, because it's 2 a.m. There's nobody out there, and they're like,
except us,
cleared for a contact approach. Like, nah, we don't do contact approaches. Maybe we'll just wait till we get a little closer and you can clear us for an approach. Anyways, okay. What are we doing, man? What are we talking about?
We're gonna do what we seem to do so often, which is go off any potential prepared script we have. We got a question that was actually it was 2 questions in one, and it was or not 2 in one, but 2 different questions that I already know. One of them, you could you'll be able to go down a rabbit hole. It's going to be, how deep do I let you go before I pull you back?
Okay.
But let me read it. The first part is actually some kudos to you. It says, thanks for putting out the LiftAffect podcast each and every week. Although I'm an airline pilot, I have several close friends that work outside of aviation that listened to it as well, because most of what you talk about can apply to most people. My 15-year-old son also loves the podcast.
Uh-oh, I better stop swearing. Well, no, he's 15. He's swearing like a sailor. Anyway.
Oh my God. All right, here's the two questions. The first one is, and he says, it's just more of curiosity.
Okay.
I read on another website that you are an executive coach. What does the executive coaching you do look like? Mechanics, structure, involvement, etc. And then I'll ask the second one. We'll get back to it. The second has to do with keeping calm in the face of mental agitation. Do you have any techniques that keep yourself from flying off the handle with temper and agitation? I assist coach my son's baseball team. Many of the kids are hard on themselves when they make a mistake, ended up losing their cool. So back to the first one.
Okay.
Yes, you do executive coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us all about it.
Tell us all about it.
Yes. Share your wisdom.
So a lot of executives in aviation, a lot of executives out of aviation. I mean, I kind of have, just from my own past experience, have specialized a little bit with executive coaching. I do healthcare executives, obviously specific, mental health related, big time, and then aviation related, just within that industry. But some others, some restaurant executives that own a bunch of restaurants and other stuff. So it helps to have specialized knowledge in that area. That helps, but it's not actually required. Sometimes you can get into the weeds with things. And often when I'm an executive coach, I actually sit on the some kind of advisory board, whether it's their actual board or the advisory board of the company. They'll put me on there because I'm strategically advising the CEO or the COO, sometimes the CMO. CEO is Chief Executive Officer, COO is the Chief Operating Officer, and the CMO is the Marketing Officer. And the CTO is the Tech Officer. So it depends on how the organization is structured, but these are C-level executives. And the reason they're getting coaching is because coaching is for winners. It's not for losers. It helps you be able to, I always tell people you can't smell your own breath. And that's what a coach does. It doesn't mean I know more than the executive. I certainly don't, but I can see things from a different vantage point that they can't. And so that's what it is. But coaching,
it's like an instructor pilot.
Yeah. Basic. Yeah. An instructor pilot with,
you're sitting in the jump seat and you're watching everything.
Yeah.
You can see things.
Yeah. It's a good analogy.
You got a bigger picture.
Good analogy. Yeah, for sure. But coaching is it's me and my client creating a possible future together, that's based on self and organizational reinvention. And I help these executives make the shift from managing a big organization to creating a great group for each person that's free to discover basically their own greatness, helping them discover what they're capable of. And every engagement is a little bit different, but depending on what they're hiring me to do, some are less involved, it's very involved. And it can be just from being a strategic thinking partner to full on like helping them with every aspect of their life. So when I'm helping them with every aspect of their life, I have to look at their biometrics. I have to look at their financial picture. I have to look at their relationships with other employees, their relationships with their families, how they recreate. It's totally immersive, totally involved, and it's a lot of work.
Didn't I hear you mention previously that the Aura ring?
Yeah. For those like so how do I do biometrics? Well, I need to be able to monitor where they're at. So a lot of times they get sent to. I've got one particular executive that goes to the Mayo Clinic. All of the executives go to the Mayo Clinic to get a full workup. And then they, all the labs basically put the rubber gloves on. And the reason is because the company wants to know that they're healthy or if they're not healthy, because if something happens to that person, that there's huge financial implications to the organization. And so that's why it's a very serious job being an executive. It's a lot of pressure. And Pilots think they're under the scrutiny. It doesn't even compare to a C-level executive of a Fortune 500 or C100 company. So we take all of that. I work in conjunction with their medical team, but I'm looking at their biometrics. So what am I looking at? Things that are going to affect their performance: sleep, heart rate variability, how much exercise they're getting, how much rest they're getting. Rest is almost more important than activity. Are they being able to rest? Building rest into their schedule. And you got to understand, an executive schedule is 15-minute blocks. That's where they are that scheduled out to the 15-minute increment. And so I look at some of those things, but it just totally depends on the engagement. But it's really in a nutshell, because we could go on down this forever, and if people want to know, we can go more into it. But it's really helping them discover an impossible future. An executive's job, a CEO's job, is to be able to see around corners where nobody else can see, because they've got to be able to steer the ship. They have to manage, they have to balance the board. They've got a board of advisors that are sometimes investors. They have to manage the shareholders. They've got to manage their executive team. They got to manage the culture. So it's a huge job. And really, they need to steer the ship into places where nobody else can see. And so the reason that a lot of executives go from company to company, they get fired and they get hired by another company, is people think, oh, how did they hire that guy? He bankrupted the last thing and they hired him again. Well, it's because the skill set is so specific and it's so difficult to get that level of experience that they're kind of on the A list, and they keep getting reused because nobody else really can handle all of those responsibilities. So their job is to see around corners, and my job is to help them strategically be able to fulfill that aspect of what they do.
It's actually, in a way, kind of like being in the cockpit. You have to anticipate those things that are in front of you, or how to deal with things that are unexpected. I mean,
Yeah.
example, what happened in 2020, nobody expected that. How do you deal with it? It's like if you have an unexpected medical on the aircraft, and looking ahead and going, what is the weather going to do to me? All these things. You're basically, their job isn't to deal with what's going on at the moment as much as what's going to go on and what has yet to happen, because what's going on right now, it's kind of like the ship's already there in a way. But there's two things I wanted to be very clear about what you do, and for others out there. Mm-hmm. One is, and you've said this to me, and it leads to the second part, is the first is, you can't want it more than they do.
Nope.
And what leads to the second part is that the fact is that you're a coach, you're not a consultant. You don't do the work for them.
No, totally different.
In other words, you're not putting together plans and things. You're basically saying, here's what you need to do. You need to go out and do it now.
Yeah, that's right.
Or here's the things you need to consider.
Yeah, I'm not boots on the ground. There are consultants that they hire to do that are basically implementers. The way that a good way to think about it is CEOs are innovators and COOs, those are operating officers, are implementers. I'm an executive coach, so I'm on the innovation side, not the implementation side. You do need to know things about implementing, and so that's an important thing. And I'll work with their implementation team, whether it is in-house people or it is contractors that they've brought in, consultants, if you will. But no, I'm a strategic thinking partner with the executive that I'm there to coach. And the engagement is anywhere from it's a minimum of a year. That's the only way I work with people. Sometimes they'll say, can you work with an executive for 3 months? The answer is no. I've done that in the past, and it doesn't lead to good outcome. It's a year. Time. It's not enough time. It's a year, and some of it are 3-year engagements. I have one particular executive that I've worked with for 9 years, and so it just depends. But the reason it's a year is that leaders develop in the process of producing extraordinary and tangible results. For them to be able to develop, you got to have a structure of a program that's in keeping with that. And a year at a minimum to be able to realize some of these transformational goals, you can't do it in less than a year, especially in a big organization. If it's a tiny organization, like, 15 people, less than 50, that's a different story.
Much more
But
nimble.
yeah. But for the big one, it takes a year, and for leaders to be able to bring themselves together and then bring their team together, and then to really transform somebody's leadership style or get an extraordinary result in a 3-day program or a month consulting agreement is just, it's totally impossible. And I've never seen it work, and I've been trained by some of the best executive coaches in the world. And it just takes, so my engagements are a minimum of 1 year. Oftentimes it's a 3-year commitment.
And no matter how successful a lot of these CEOs that you see out there are, almost all of them have someone that coaches them. It's the rarity.
Yeah,
it really
you have
is.
to. Yeah, there's no 100%. The good ones, and you have to have a coach. We all should have a coach. Pilots, in some respects, should have a coach. And here's how to think about it, even so you can even apply this to your own life. If you're gonna, you can even coach yourself when you think about your own, like, I want to transform myself, or I want to just be able to, like, bring myself up. Make it 2 years. So first one is phase one. Let's say Q1 is formulate. So you want to engage and inquire about what is a really good, what are my values? What's a goal? What are the kind of plans that we can formulate? How do I want to lead? What's the challenges? It's really is what is missing from what I'm doing. And then if I provide this, can make a difference, right? That's how you find out. This is the formulation phase. Q2 is the concentration phase. So now you want to launch an initiative. What's going to be the kind of the big wow project, a rapid prototype, if you will, and keep going. You got to keep going in the absence of results, because it's going to take a while. And so it's like, okay, let's stop talking. Let's start doing. Q3 is now when we're in the momentum phase, which is we're going to create a widening circle of smaller successes. Q4 is the breakthrough. So we're going to build on success by starting to scale up what we've worked on and what's been initiated and what's been executed on. The second year is the entire year is sustainability. So you want to set up the business processes, start to institutionalize the gains. I coach these leaders in helping the leaders coach their people in a sustainability phase of how do we, let's sustain what we're doing. So that's like a quick, 2-year engagement. And you can see why this takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. Transformation does not happen overnight. It's doing a little bit, a lot, not trying to just do a lot, a little, which is why I say that all the time.
In your experience, what has been the one trait that you kind of see as a common thread in those that you've coached that are successful? And what's the one common trait you've seen in those that you've coached that have struggled or have failed?
It's a really hugely insightful question. This is what I see. It's changed throughout the years, because sometimes in the past, I didn't know what I was seeing. So I think it's always been there. And as I do more and more of this, I start to go, you know what, this is actually something that I'm seeing as part of the recipe of what makes them successful. One, and I'll tell you, at the V1 project, that's a long, it's like basically like a coaching program. As I've taken a lot of the executive coaching and a lot of the mental skills coaching I do, and with the pilots, and we've combined it into V1. And V1 is, we tell everybody that goes into V1, you need to be here at least a year. And I'll tell you, most people that go into it, they'll be there forever. Because growth should never stop. Either you're growing or you're dying. That's everything in biology shows the same thing. There's no stagnation. Stagnation is death. And especially when it comes to your own personal development. So I think growth is a continual process. To answer your question, one is creativity. The executives that are most successful that I've worked with have a very structured process of invigorating and cultivating creativity within themselves. Because again, their job is to be able to be creative. Being an executive is absolutely, it's like being an artist at the highest level. And if you stop being creative and you stop being able to see, the painting, it's like watching Bob Ross. You ever watch Bob Ross? He's amazing, right? Because you're like, he starts something and you're like, he's like, yeah, he sees it before it's even on the canvas. And you're like, wait, what? I still don't see it. I don't see it. Oh, there's the lake, right? That's what good executives do. They're masters at being able to see things that nobody else sees. And it's a particular mindset of creativity. And, Juliet Cameron's The Artist Way is something I've used with executives working that 12-week program of creativity. There's a lot of different ways of cultivating creativity, but being able to be absolutely creative, and a lot of executives spend time doing very creative things that you would never suspect. You would be like, what? He's doing that? Because they're keeping that spigot open of creativity. That's the first thing. The second thing is their ability to organize their time, which comes down to Pareto's principle. Executives are masters at knowing what is important and knowing what is not important and being able to make a decision very quickly. Flying has absolutely helped cultivate that skill for me. Is I understand how to take a lot, and any good pilot that's flown knows how to take a bunch of information very quickly and make a decision. And that's what executives have to do. They got to be able to move quickly and make decisions. Third, the ones that are not afraid to fail. They have inoculated themselves to the negative impacts of failure. They don't see it as losing, they just see it as learning. And then the fourth piece is their ability to rest. It's not just their ability to output, it's their ability to take breaks. And the executives that can manage that at a very high level end up having much more endurance and much better decision-making process, because they understand how and the importance of being able to rest. Even if it's in 5 minutes, they know that. I've got one guy that works, he uses a timer to work in 20-minute increments with 2 minutes of rest, and he does it all day. And the output of this guy is just insane. It's insane, but he really knows how to manage his rest. And that's the difference. What separates the big dogs from the puppies is not just churn, it's stopping and resting.
There's someone we both know, Karl Bryan, does the same thing. He does it in 2-hour increments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Karl, exactly. That's another perfect example.
See, right? Yeah, I asked for one, you gave me 3 bonuses there. How about the thing that you see that in ones that struggle or fail?
The ones that struggle or fail do not rest. The ones that struggle or fail do not, they think everything is important. This is very difficult for people in tech, because a lot of people in tech were programmers and they love to program. They grew up programming, writing code when they were 14 or 15, and then they built these tech companies, and they want to be in there programming. It's sort of like me saying, I want to be in there and fly. I want to fly, right? Well, I can't perform what I do for pilots at the highest level if I'm still trying to keep my foot in what I love passionately so much. So the ones that want to still hold on to the process of what they do, they can't continue to. They have to have other people do that so that they can focus on the things that are important. And so the ones that don't want to give that up because they're so addicted to whatever that is, end up creating a lot of problems. The ones that do not rest end up burning themselves out. Lack of organization, not being able to make decisions quickly creates a lot of problems, because there's so much rapid fire, and then they start to just get way behind. So, and some other things too. I mean, almost every executive I coach has ADHD. I mean, by far, because they're, it's just part of what makes their mind so amazing. So you got to, they know how, they've learned how to work, either they've learned how to work with it and manage it, or they haven't.
Is there a
But
certain personality trait? You hear about some of them that just have like no empathy or the lack of empathy, because sometimes make those quick decisions affects hundreds and thousands of people, depending on the size of the
yeah,
company. And they, because of the health or the law, the for what's in the best interest of the company, they can't
right,
take that into account.
right.
But that takes a certain kind of personality. Someone that's empathetic would struggle mightily with that,
It does. And
because you're putting, somebody in their family out of work.
yeah. And look,
Potentially.
there's a reason I get hired, because I'm also a psychotherapist. And so, is there, like, there's psychotherapy infused in everything, in my opinion. And so sometimes, yeah, they have a very tough job to do. They have to answer to shareholders, and their job is to drive profit, period. And anybody that thinks that that's not the job of the executive is fooling themselves. But it's also being able to help them develop some some empathy, and to be able to learn how to infuse empathy into their leadership and even to some of their decision making. That's something that can be cultivated. I personally don't like working with executives that are sociopaths, and I have worked with some that are diagnosable sociopaths. I don't usually take those engagements anymore. If you're not a human being, and if you're just completely crazy, I don't want to collude with that and cultivate. That's not what I stand for. It's not what I believe in. And I don't really work with those people, but they do have to make hard calls, because they got to make, they're in charge of a lot of different spinning plates, and you can't, you know, you can't crash the entire airplane just to try to save one person and end up killing them all. I mean, you have to make hard calls. But I think developing empathy and learning to lead with empathy is something that is a you can cultivate that skill. You can develop that skill, and it's something that I just believe in, and I do. And a lot of the executives, they want to work with me because I have the ability to have those kinds of conversations and be real and be a human being. And executives are often not, they're pushed into not being human beings because the expectations are so high. But just like pilots are humans, executives are humans too.
Well, I'll probably end this question with this one statement that I think anybody that's in aviation can totally relate to. Probably one of the best ever that's been able to walk the line between being the COO, getting buy-in, having a vision, was Herb Kelleher from
Yeah.
Southwest. He
Yeah.
was able to motivate his people. He was seeing things from a napkin that he drew, on to creating a very strong company and airline,
Can,
and it's struggling now that vision.
can I
It's
be controversial?
sure, go for it.
Um, just from my experience of working with a lot of Southwest, Herb was absolutely a CEO type. Total example, right? I mean, just kind of off the wall, and saw things, really made some changes, but it is biting them in the ass, because this go, 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 is not sustainable, and it's not healthy, and it's creating a very contentious group. Every pilot, and by the way, Delta, American, United, y'all are contentious in your own ways. I mean, that's just the way it is. I don't
Oh
think
yeah.
you're perfect, right? Don't think your poop doesn't smell. All of our poops smell in the regionals and everything else. But that there was when there's a lack of evolution, you're going to end up failing. And so the genius it's only genius for a time. You've got to be able to change and adapt with the environment that you're in, which includes the human factor, and where where that pilot group is at, where their age group is at, where their health is at. All of that stuff matters. And driving these guys to just quick turn over and over and over and over, you're pile driving people into the ground.
For so long, it was us against the world. They were the small guy. They went to the peripheral airports. They didn't have the legacy issues that the big airlines did. And all of a sudden, one day, they turned around and we were now them type thing.
Yeah.
They were now no different than the others, and had to deal with all of the issues that the legacy carriers had been dealing with. But during the time frame that Herb was there, that he really worked that to almost perfection to get him to really grow that during those first 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, genius. I mean, genius. All these, even I don't want to be controversial, but like some of the executives of American, like there's a lot of these guys when you really study them and look at their history and where it's profound. To what they've been able to do, what they had been able to do, and to be able to manage all that. And they made a lot of big mistakes, but they also made a lot of really pretty incredible decisions. So it's not in a vacuum.
Well, let's get on to the second one.
Second question,
which is how do you keep calm in the face of mental agitation? Do you have any techniques to help yourself from flying off the handle with temper and agitation, either with someone who's flying off the handle, or I'm going to add in my own pieces to stop yourself from flying off the handle?
Yeah. Was there something about a baseball?
He was talking about a baseball team when his kids were hard on themselves.
Yeah.
That's what I say. He was talking about both helping someone else who's flying off the handle and help yourself.
Yes.
Look at road rage. You fly off the handle.
Man.
I mean, that's just a classic example. So what are some techniques that can help anybody, either someone else or help yourself?
So, I'm a big, like awareness guy. If you don't know that it's happening, you can't really fix it. And most people trip up because they don't know they're stalling. You need to be able to recognize the stall if you want to be able to correct it. And that's just within yourself. So being ungrounded is sort of like stalling. So what are the signs of being ungrounded? There's a bunch. One is, the biggest one is just being distracted easily. Means you're probably becoming ungrounded, as we're going to define it. So let's back up, right? So what does grounded mean? To me, it means being fully present in your body and in your mind, to your experience of what is happening. That's being grounded. And second, being grounded means just feeling connected. Feeling connected. It could be feeling connected to the earth, being connected to the situation, being connected to others. To me, that's what being grounded is. So what are the signs of being ungrounded? Is being distracted easily. And boy, man, do we live in a culture that is just driven to distraction in every way. By the way, read the book, Driven to Distraction. It's a great book by Johann Hari. It's incredible book. Maybe we'll review that sometime. But being distracted easily, spacing out, overthinking or ruminating is when you're ungrounding. Engaging in a bunch of drama, personal drama, anxiety, perpetual worry. These are the signs when you're being grounded. I think when you're desiring material things too much, just possessed, I've got to have this thing, is a sign of being ungrounded, which I just am speaking from what I see all the time. Being deceived by yourself or by others, right? The little ad ticker pops up and you grab it. That's sort of like you're being gullible. That means you're grounded. An obsession with, your image, personal image obsession. There are physical symptoms and signs of being ungrounded: inflammation, poor sleep, fatigue, chronic pain. These are signs of being ungrounded. And you think about it as a world, it's like it's an epidemic of ungroundedness. That's the first part. Does that make sense, Karl, to you? I mean, does that, knowing when am I ungrounded? I mean, when do you find yourself most ungrounded? I know when I find myself most ungrounded. Mine is like 5 o'clock in the afternoon when I'm super tired, or 6 o'clock, 6 o'clock, just got picked up my daughter, wife comes home and they're talking to me and I'm just like not even hearing them.
Yeah. It's really, you're distracted by something else, or there's a little bit of stress, and it just doesn't take much to, so to speak, poke the bear. And so you're, in a way, when you're flying off the handle, in my case, I hate to say it, it's not so much what's going on right now that's causing it. It's everything else. And this was just almost a way, it was like a pressure relief valve. This is how I express it. And that's not appropriate, but that's what happens sometimes, where it's the wrong time, wrong place. It just all came to this moment. But it's usually when I'm distracted or stressed about something else that's going on, and it just, just press that last button that needed to be pressed.
Yep, for sure. So how do we unground? So what do we do to ground, right? And what are the benefits of ground? I mean, benefits of grounding is it reduces inflammation, it elevates your mood, improves, immune response, it improves blood flow, it reduces emotional stress. Lots of good benefits of grounding. So, okay, what do we do to ground? We could talk about dropping anchor, but let me go somewhere else with that instead of
Well, let me
dropping
hit
anchor.
you
I
with
think
the
we've
one
talked
thing
about
I
that.
do.
Okay,
Once
go
I've
for it.
realized, once
Hit
I've
me.
realized and I kind of look back and go, there was no reason for me to do that. It's just like you say, once you acknowledge that you're there, and we've talked about it many times, is I do that. I take that deep breath through the nose, and just it helps kind of just it like de-escalates. It helps me kind of reset and recage the gyros a little bit. And although it may not remove everything, it kind of helps me start to be a little bit more rational and look at things more pragmatically objectively than emotionally.
Breath is huge. Yeah.
That's the first thing that I try to do. But the key is, you've always said, you got to realize that it's happening. While you're emotional, I watch my kids, you've got to calm them down until they're calming down. It doesn't make a difference. If they want something and they're saying, I want this, and you can say, yes, you can have it. And they're still screaming because they can't hear you.
I'll tell you, I'll tell you, I use a behavioral activation kind of method, which is an outside in, right? I don't, certainly with adults, you don't have to feel good about it to change your physical body. Do something with your body and then see how your mood follows. So when my daughter's like kind of starting to lose it, I will have her just say, okay, listen, you can scream and yell, but you got to put your hand on top of your head. So first thing is cover your crown. So, and I don't fully understand why this works. This was taught to me. I don't understand the neuroscience behind it. There's some reason, but it almost always works. So when you're ungrounded, place one hand over the crown of your head. Just do it, Karl. Try it right now. Just do it. That's it. And if it helps, just close your eyes and just do it for 20 more seconds. I'm just putting my hand on the top of my head. And I hope you're doing this if you're listening. Just do it. You could be driving and do it. That's it. That's all you have to do. 5 more seconds. Okay, stop. You see how that works?
I guess it's a little bit harder for me right now because I'm not. I guess
you're not activated.
I'm not activated.
But you could still feel a physiological drop, right?
A draining of
it's so that's just cover your crown. Like Karl said, follow your breath. I go 5-1-7 and all through your nose, not through your mouth. That's another, just stop mouth breathing. You'll ground yourself a lot quicker. So I inhale for 5, hold for 1, exhale for 7. So let's try it through the nose. Wow. It's like clicking the autopilot off. And that's what I say is just hand fly. Turn the autopilot off, hand fly.
I will tell you, I don't care whether you're grounded or not. It's worth doing several times a day. It's just
do it once an hour. Every time you check your texts.
Sounds corny, but it works.
Do it. Before you check your email or your text, just click the autopilot off. 5-1-7. Another one, stand like a tree, stand tall. Stand with your feet parallel or at least shoulders width apart, or sit up straight. Keep your head floating above your body, chin tucked and spine straight. And then just rest your hands at your side, or place them, even place them over your abdomen, your navel. And sink all the body's weight and tension into your feet or your butt without collapsing the posture. Just do it for like 10 seconds. Boom. It's amazing what that does. You're changing the physiological posture to change the emotional response. If you're in deep trouble and you're so like, oh my gosh, you're just off the handle, take a cold shower. Cold exposure has shown to increase immunity. It reduces fat and it elevates mood, because what it does is it for the mood part is it triggers dopamine in an adaptive way. And if you're not accustomed to cold showers, at the end of your hot shower, make the warm water like lukewarm for 30 seconds and just let it pound on your chest. And over the course of the next few weeks, keep getting it a little bit colder, a little bit colder. You can train your body to be okay with cold showers. Most of my showers I do are cold. It just doesn't matter. Get it as cold as possible. That's a really, really good thing to do. Second, let's get a little voodoo, is ground to the earth. And they're doing this at Major League Baseball teams. I saw this recently. You go to a field and all these baseball players are walking around on the field, just walking lines with their shoes off, barefoot. That's grounding. Feet to the earth. There's there is lots of research on this of what it does physiologically, and it's evidence-based. I haven't really read up on it, but you can go and read on it. But grounding to the earth is a really good thing. So if you're really, really upset, go take your shoes off and go walk outside in the yard, especially at night when it's cold and it's wet in the summer. Just walk around with your feet, bare feet in the grass, or put your hands down, your hands and your feet in the grass, and just sit there for a couple minutes. It's amazing what it does. It's like a grounding wire in an outlet. If there's a short circuit, the ground wire provides a path for an electrical current to be absorbed into the ground. And don't forget, our bodies are electricity. Your brain is electricity. That's what we measure when you're looking at ECGs. Your heart is electricity. We have electricity in our body. So you can ground yourself to the earth just like you do with an electrical outlet.
Well, I know that we can go much further down this hole. I guess I just want to bring it back just so that we make sure that we answer the question, because I kind of took us off track by talking about us. How about helping someone else? We talked about putting the hand on the forehead. What other things can you
teach
do
them to do
else?
everything I just said? That's how you help them to do it.
Well, getting in a cold shower is kind of hard at a baseball game, as an example.
Well, no. Well, you don't train. Look, you don't train in the environment. You train in a neutral environment.
But how do you help someone that's in the moment?
You have them put their hand. So here's what I'll say. Don't worry about this idea that I have to feel better first to be able to do something is total nonsense. So I will tell, and I tell my clients, I've coached baseball players, is I really don't care how you feel about it. I don't really care what you think. Just change what you're doing with your body. So you can be freaking out and be upset. You can't control your thoughts. I'm not going to say, well, let's calm down first, and then I'm going to show. You can't calm your thoughts down. That thought control isn't a real thing. But what you can do is change what you do with your body. And when you change what you do with your body, the body talks to the brain instead of just the brain talking to the body. The body talks back to the brain. So if you're ungrounded, or your child is ungrounded, or your friend is ungrounded, whoever you're with is ungrounded, help them with, okay, that's fine. You can be upset, but put your hand on the top of your head and put your other hand over your abdomen while you tell me how awful this is. And I guarantee you that they'll be talking and they'll be upset, but it will start to calm down. So you're changing the physiology, and then the brain starts to change in response to that. It's called outside in versus inside out. Inside out is I got to change how I feel first before I change my behavior. Actually, you don't. Change your behavior and then see how it changes how you feel internally. That's what I would suggest, is just do some of those techniques regardless of what's going on in your brain, regardless of how emotionally activated you are. I mean, when people say just relax, like when think about this, when you're in an argument or you're upset and somebody tells you to relax, how does that make you feel? What does that do to you? Makes you want to punch the wall.
It elevates it and makes it worse.
Of course, it makes it worse.
Irritated.
You're already irritated. So I will never tell somebody just relax. What I might say is relax your body, not your mind. You can't change your mind. You can't stop your thoughts, but you can actually change the way that we've talked about muscle metabolism and muscle tension and all that stuff before. So, but that's the number one thing I would say is don't worry about what your mind is doing when you're ungrounded. change physiologically how you're approaching it and see how the mind actually reacts to that.
Well, I got one last question for you. You mentioned a book, Driven to Distraction.
Yes.
I went and looked real quick. Who's the author again?
Johann Hari.
The reason I ask is I went and looked, and I know it's not this one, The Road to Love novels.
No, not that one.
There's another one here that's by
maybe it's
Edward Hallowell.
No, Ed Hallowell. Oh, okay, hold on. I'm getting it confused. No, there's a
I just don't want people to go looking for it and they can't find it.
Look up Johann Hari.
Because I had Driven to Distraction, Recognizing and Coping with Attention Deficit Disorder is the one I found.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's Ed Hallowell. That's an ADHD book. Yep. No, that's actually a great book too. No, there's another one. Stolen Focus. I'm sorry. It's called Stolen Focus. I just looked it up. Yeah, yep, that's his amazing book by Johann Hari, Hari, called Stolen Focus. That's the impact. If you want to read a great book, he looks at all the science, and it came out, I think, last year. Read that book. He also wrote a really good book called Lost Connections on mental health, his own mental health struggles with depression and anxiety. But yeah, Stolen Focus is an incredible book if you want to kind of check out the impact of our lack of ability to focus because of distractions.
I just want you to know, I do actually listen to what you say.
Yeah. Sometimes.
Oh my God. So from this, what would be the big takeaway for today? And we'll deal more with the second question than the first one.
You covered. You take it today. What's the big takeaway? What did you take away from it? Forget what I took away. What did you take away?
Geez. I always believe that it's recognizing what's going on and getting to a point where you have some clarity of thought. Yeah. Because once you can think clearly, your decisions, your responses are better because they're not coming from a point of emotion. And sometimes, how often have we said things that as soon as we said them, we go, I really didn't mean that.
Yes.
Didn't mean to say that.
Yep.
It came out because it was a moment of anger, a moment of frustration, whatever. And it's because I wasn't thinking clearly. It was an emotional response, not a rational one.
Yep.
And it's hard. It's hard to, when you see yourself reaching that point, and it's something I work on every day. And more often than not, I hate to say it, I fail. But every day I get up and I keep telling myself, today I'm going to be better than I was yesterday and not as good as tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's the way I try to always treat things, even though it's a, like you said, growth. You'll never stop. And it's not something that if you fix it today, that you'll never have to worry about it tomorrow, because
totally,
it can happen again and again. And you always have to be on guard for it.
But don't be so hard on yourself, like you're going to have days where it's just messy and you just can't, you can barely keep it together. Don't be afraid of being sloppy. Life is sloppy. It's messy. And it's not about just, I'm not perfect. And our listeners are the most perfectionistic crowd in the world. And so stop with the perfectionism. You're holding yourself to a stupid standard. Like just do the best you can and implement some of these tools and see how that changes the outcome.
Absolutely. As always, we thank all of our listeners and the comments. And as you can see, we discuss them, and usually they end up turning into an entire episode in and of themselves. So please keep them coming. We appreciate them. It allows us to be able to talk about the things that are important to you. So any that you have, please send them. And we'll take negative ones too. If you have criticisms, we prefer constructive criticisms rather than destructive. But if there's something that you disagree with, we'd love to hear that too. But just please keep sending in the comments. podcast@LiftAffect.com. Please give us a like, a thumbs up, a share. Tell your friends. You'll hear us say it on every episode because this is how the word gets out. We really appreciate you being there, because without you, there's no reason for us. So thank you. We hope you have a great day. And until next week, Matt.
Adios. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the LiftAffect podcast. If you want to dive deeper into this episode and every episode, go to our website, liftaffect.com/podcast. If you're enjoying the show, we would love it if you'd follow us on Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate your support. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all with the ID Matthew McNeil. This show is brought to you by LiftAffect, a clinical mental health and consulting company that assists air carriers, corporate flight departments, pilot unions, and commercial pilots by providing comprehensive psychotherapy and mental skills coaching services to pilots with mental health and mental performance-related issues. Visit liftaffect.com, that's LiftAffect.com, to book your free consultation. And finally, this podcast is for general informational purposes only. It does not constitute the practice of counseling, psychotherapy, medicine, or any other healthcare service, including the giving of medical advice. No therapeutic or provider-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and any materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional psychological advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining advice for any psychological or medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the LiftAffect podcast.